Hello there, it's Adam Brown here from the 12 p.m. Monday seminar on the Burwood campus, and I just tried to do a live video broadcast with Twitter Video now that Periscope's closed down, and it completely failed on me. I actually went live and nothing came out of it, so I'm now recording a video in the seminar as if it's live. I'm not going to stop this, I'm not going to cut this or anything like that, so if I stuff up, then that happens. Obviously, it's well done to everyone on the first assignment. I wanted to briefly mention that. I'm actually here to talk about the second assignment a little bit more. I've actually got a cinematographer coming around without me knowing here to get a different angle. Is this a good angle? Thank you very much. And I want to talk to you about the second assignment mostly, Portfolio Output 1. But I did want to give a shout out to lots of really great effort with the first assignment. It's terrific to see. The one piece of general feedback I'd give that really relates to a lot of people, it's impossible with nearly 500 students to give general feedback to everyone, is that you want to make sure that you catch up and or keep up with the learning resources. It's really clear if you haven't done that, and there's a lot of stuff, particularly from weeks 3, 4, 5, and 6, that is relevant to the next assignment. You know, you've just come onto the frame there. You know?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, cool.
Hey guys.
Hey, what's your name again?
My name is Thien. I'm chewing gum.
Great. This is what happens with media making when you actually don't know what might come out of it. Now, what I'm going to do here is to give some key pieces of advice which in the past I've made using VoiceBite. Hands up in the class, there's about a dozen people here. Who has heard of VoiceBite?
I have not.
You have not.
No.
How terrible. Doesn't matter, it's now gone. When it came, it was about 3 or 4 years ago, someone invented it. It was an audio sharing little facility where I could do up to 15 seconds of audio bites where I could basically share, and you just click a little play button and you'd hear my voice for up to 15 seconds. And I used to make some little sound bites of advice for the upcoming assignment, and I used to be able to reshare them every year. The problem is that that's shut down. I no longer have that video and those series of videos, and instead of that, I still got the tweets, so I know what I used to say in them, so I'm going to, if I can, share them in this video here. Now, with that being said, I've already made the students in this seminar very nervous because they're listening to me, wondering when I'm going to turn things over to them. So I'm going to share up to 6 pieces of advice that are probably located in an implicit way in some of the learning resources, but I think that I've phrased them here differently, and it's good to have reminders that I have not shared in this way elsewhere. So that's what I'm going to share with you. With your Portfolio Output 1 assignment, I'm going to give you the first one. Now here's the rules, and all the students in this room know this. If I share one, and then another student, we've all got pieces of advice we're going to share, comes up and shares it on screen, then I'll share my second piece of advice, and so on and so forth. If someone doesn't share, and no one else comes up, then I'll close down the video and not give the full 6 pieces of advice. However, we've got potentially 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, about 10 pieces of advice in addition, or sometimes they might even steal mine, to what I'm going to say. So we'll see how we go. The first piece of advice for the Portfolio Output 1 is really important. I've actually tweeted about this, but I think it's important to reiterate. When I ask for embedded tweets in a blog post, a lot of people think that means I have to analyze my Twitter presence. I have to talk about my online identity on Twitter. I need you to think about Twitter, if you're thinking that way, in a slightly different way here. Think about it as a way of communicating. Most people on Twitter are not tweeting about Twitter. They're just using Twitter as a vehicle to convey ideas, to ask questions, to engage with other source material, to share or link articles, to make polls, to interact with their audience and get data, to doing something creative, to embedding other media such as a Canva design or a photograph and comment on it in a tweet. People use tweets in vastly different ways, and you can too. So don't make the mistake of assuming, although it's fine if you do want to talk about your online identity in Twitter, that you have to do that just because you are using tweets. It's the same as saying you're making a WordPress blog, then you have to write about your use of WordPress. That doesn't make sense, obviously. It's the same with Twitter. So I hope that helps. Before I move on to point number 2, anyone else want to come up? Just in case something else unexpected happens in this video, where I've already had one person join me and that was not planned or scripted, I had no idea. And this is a skill you want to develop. The serendipity of media making is that you have no idea what might happen sometimes when you go live. And I could edit that out, but I'm not going to because it was cool. Who's coming up? All right.
Hey guys, it's a cinema photographer here. So yeah, my advice is stop watching procrastination YouTube to procrastinate your assignments. So that's my best piece over there. Thank you.
Okay, that's a good, broad, general piece of advice. Make sure you set aside time for the assignment. Procrastination is not always a negative thing, but it can become a negative thing. So that's great. Thank you very much for sharing that. My second piece of advice is around focus. Now, there's lots of things that I can say, and I have said even in the instructions around focus. I think that one of the things I want to reiterate, which I even did here, I'm getting quite a few emails here at the moment, even just today, which I haven't got back to, so if you're watching this, I will get back to you soon, asking, can I talk about my use of Instagram? Can I talk about this experience? Can I talk about... My answer to every single one of those students will be yes. If you say something that's relevant to your online identity as your example, then it's going to work. Then it's going to work because it's relevant. However, the key point is that if you talk about the way in which I use Instagram, you could write 100 plus, 200 plus different blog posts on that, I'm sure, using different examples potentially, depending on how active you are. Now, that's not really saying much about what you're going to say. The key thing is to remember, back from week 4, when we're talking about excellent writing, is to move from the particular, your specific example, which in this case is constructing your identity on Instagram, different things you could say about that, to the general theme of online identity. And if you are using scholarly source material, as you're actually required to, if you do some research, the more reading, the more thinking you do, that will help you figure out what you might say about it. Because you want it to inform not only your writing, but your thinking. So we'll probably have more to say about using source material as this video goes on, but that's a really key thing that I wanted to emphasize here. Focusing is not just thinking about what's the thing I'm going to talk about with my own online identity, because you're actually going to focus on that example or those examples in certain ways using your reading. So don't leave your reading till the last minute, because you want it to inform your reading, and it's very common, as has been said elsewhere, to sort of just try and cherry pick quotations at the last minute without even reading a full source. So obviously it's really useful to do that. Right, anyone else want to share a piece of advice before I move on? Thank you. It's always the weird wait while I have to, thank you.
Hello, I'm Hannah. My piece of advice is probably go through the unit outline before you start the course, just to see when everything's due, and then you've got a good timeline for yourself about when to do things and how to structure everything. Anyways, thank you. Bye.
Stuff. I really like how everyone is projecting their voice, even though the camera is not that far. It's learning by doing. You know that you're probably speaking louder, I imagine, than if you were speaking to the people in this room who are further away from you, which is interesting. You know that these people are more distant. You want to get into the microphone. The third thing is using source material. I already alluded to it. Make sure you don't just cherry pick quotations. Make sure you read a source. If you're using a chapter, you don't have to read the whole book to get the full context, but at least read the whole chapter, because you want to understand how it's being used. I've seen so many students use an article that I used to set in the past where you only really get the sense of what the key argument is in the second half of it, but it's really clear they get it reversed and they get the argument wrong because they didn't read the whole thing. So that's important. Look for key concepts, definitions, ideas, arguments, whatever. Understand them using the broader source material, and then you can apply it much more persuasively. All right, anyone else want to add a point of advice in? Great, thank you. Make sure you introduce yourself. Cheers.
Okay. Hi, I'm Emma. My piece of advice would be to not only use your own images, but mix in those of other people's. Also to use the correct licensing when you're doing so. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Great advice. You don't have to, but that idea of a combination and showing off a range of skills from the options available is a really great one. The fourth thing, very briefly, it's in the instructions anyway, I think, or it's certainly in lots of conversations people have. You can use the first person. This is a blog post about your online identity. It's going to be very hard to write if you don't say I, my, me, whatever in part of it. But if you find that you're writing every sentence with the first person and you're saying I, my, me constantly, it's going to sound more like an informal, overly informal diary entry rather than having a mixture of those kinds of passages with the third person where you're extrapolating out and probably going from the particular, the specific, to the general, where you don't need the first person. So that's a key point there. It doesn't have to be overly formal, but make sure it doesn't turn into a diary entry. Do we have another student who'd like to come forward? I've got 2 more points in my list. Be much quicker to use VoiceByte's 15-second videos, but unfortunately they're unavailable. So I hope you get value out of this as much more advice. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Ben. My piece of advice would be to create an interesting title just to engage your audience more.
Oh, Ben, you've just stolen the next one. The next one, it was on titles. Do I get another student now, or do I go to the last one? What do I? Oh, last one. That was so quick. There was no thinking. I can expand a little bit. A great point, Ben. Titles, we talked a lot about that in the previous seminar last week. I'll expand by saying we see a lot of blog posts that are called ALM 101, ALM 101 Portfolio Output 1, ALM 101 Assignment 1, Online Identity, My Online Identity, and so on and so forth. I think that creativity is always subjective, but you can probably universally accept that some blog post titles don't have as much effort or interesting stuff in them than others. That's not to say that we'll be looking for something that blows our mind. Just be a little bit creative with it. Now you can also use subheadings. So Ben didn't steal the subheadings thing, but thank you, Ben. You don't have to, but you'll see in a lot of my blog posts, if you look through them, I use 1 or 2 subheadings for a decent length blog post. Don't use too many, don't use 1 per paragraph because then it's unstructured. You don't have to use any either though, but that's a really great option for not only structuring things, but conveying extra meaning in the structure of your post. All right, I think I said enough extra stuff about that. 1 more person. And then we'll see if we have even more than 1 more person. I've got one really important point. I'd love to share it. Don't know what's gonna happen though. This video's gotten long, so most people aren't still watching. You know that, right? Alright, just gonna leave me hanging. Oh, thank you very much. Good stuff. Alright.
Hi, my name's John. My piece of advice is to pick an interesting topic for your assignment so the teacher doesn't get bored reading the same stuff over and over again.
Thank you. Keep it interesting. Don't think of your marker, think of your audience, because hopefully your audience won't be just a marker, but really great advice there. Think about how you could make your blog post stand out. Now, a lot of the advice that's already been given in this video and elsewhere actually will help your blog post stand out. So it's not rocket science, but it is about really engaging with the resources, really thinking critically and creatively, doing some reading early, experimenting with some media, maybe even making a practice blog post. It doesn't always take that long, but hitting publish on a blog post before you make your first one for the assignment will actually make it a bit easier. Now, in relation to another way that you can make your blog post stand out, not only from others, but from, make it stand out for the audience when they're reading it, is to intersperse. The idea of interspersing your media is important. We see a lot of blog posts where all the writing's at the top or the bottom, and all the media, visual and embedded tweets, are at the top or the bottom, respectively. Don't worry. You're in the video again now. So that's a really important point as well. So make sure you intersperse your media. It doesn't have to be really, even, but I've seen some blog posts where the embedded tweets, without being relevant or anything, were put underneath the reference list. So they weren't even really in the blog post and they just were added in. That's not going to add any value. It's going to be basically you didn't use tweets in that case. So there's a lot of different options. There's a lot of examples out there. I want to flag one of my examples that I've shown. And I also want to flag examples, and I want to really give kudos to Joe, who did a practice blog post called "Are We All Stars on Social Media?" That was shared to the unit hashtag in the recent days. Really terrific blog post there. You won't be able to read it from here, but I do recommend that you check out the hashtag and give Joe C a follow. Joe Creative Text is her handle. And I also wanted to give a shout out to Emery, who about the same time, it's at Emery_Deacon, made a blog post that responded to the various questions for week 5, embedding some media. And while that will be a very different blog post than the assignment blog post, the very fact of building your confidence and practicing will no doubt make a big difference. Check out the unit hashtag. There's lots of great media there. It's terrific to see. Your online identity is not nailed down. You don't have to have a fully formed online identity. You won't ever have a fully formed online identity. If you think you have, you're doing the wrong thing. Because I even recently, not many people have even noticed because you have to go to my profile picture, changed my header image from something that had been for several years and was getting very out of date. My online identity continues organically to grow, to expand, to detract in some platforms. That's the way of making social media, by learning by doing. And I want to read you one more thing to really reiterate the importance of thinking about creativity the way we do in this unit. John Cleese, I haven't read this book yet, Creativity, but on the back it's got, there's a myth that creativity is something you have to be born with. This isn't the case. Anyone can be creative, or as David Gauntlet would say, anyone can do creative things. The key is to do them, to learn by doing. Thank you very much to everyone who helped out. And would you like me to do a quick spin so that you can all say farewell to the audience?
Sure.
All right, make some noise.
Bye.
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 Thank you for watching. Bye.